Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Good morning, Pastor Jardula, right here.
And I'm Fiorella. I thought you were going to say something else.
Why would I say anything else? That's your line. And
No,
Oz
you
is
said-
on. Let me
said I'm
introduce
right
Oz
here.
before you start wrecking at me, okay? Before you start beating me up on screen, let me send some messages and love to Oz. Oz is on the ones and twos with the overalls, fam. What do you got to say?
Bam. I thought you were going to say I'm here in the studio in Las Vegas. I am blah, blah, blah. Like,
Well, everybody could see I look beautiful. It's very pretty. I got the Convo Couch on the board behind me. I got green. I can change the colors at any time, fam, on the nice plastic plant. I mean, it's just like, it's nice and spacious. Hold on a second. Yeah, can you hold my calls for a little bit? I'm in the middle of a show. Send me up a black cup of coffee. Doing a great job over there. I'll see you in a little bit. Yeah, fam. So that's what's going on over here on my end. You know what I'm saying? Just having a good time. But it is an early morning show, guys. It's in between the morning and the regular show, whatever the case may be. So what we're going to need everybody to do is go ahead and like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I want to say thank you to all I've been getting the notices from all the Rockfin people to re-upping on their subscriptions. You guys are amazing. All the amazing tips coming through. You guys have done so much, especially with YouTube kind of demonetizing us. You guys have really kept us afloat. We can't thank you enough for doing so. And we have a lot of stuff to look forward in this next coming year. Right, fam?
yeah, we do. We do. I was just looking at Oz.
What's the matter, Oz?
Sliding around, or you framing?
No. We were just adjusting a camera a little bit and stuff. Did you crop me at all, or did you just leave me the whole screen?
Yeah. He just had a heart attack. It's okay.
Yeah, Rob, you just gave Oz a heart attack over there. Rob gave the Jonny answer. Don't worry about it. The Vinny Boombots answer, whatnot. Fam, there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on. I got the Las Vegas Journal right in front of me. And I got to tell you that the media is all in for this charade over here. Congress has was moved by Zelensky's plea. They were just moved, fam. They were so emotional. And, I'm saying we're to the point where Nancy Pelosi can give you a freaking, what kind of slogan did she give us the other day, fam? You did a little show on it?
Oh, the she gave us the Stefan Bandera salute, glory to Ukraine salute.
Yep. Well, they're all in on it, and they're trying their hardest, fam, to make this thing stick. But a lot of people are not falling for it. A lot of people don't want to pay at the gas pump. I saw a little meme today of an older woman cursing, saying, you gave these people $1 billion. You've given them $2 billion since Biden's coming into office. Mostly weapons, fam, right? It's like, the military industrial complex, they got to get their scuttle. They got their money with the big pharma people. So now over here, it's their turn. And it's just another way, fam, of funneling money for something we shouldn't even really be involved with. We shouldn't have been involved with since the get-go of 2014. I made that tweet, fam. We have 700,000 people on the streets. And now you want to give another $1 billion to the Ukraine, mostly in weapons, fam?
Sam, by the way, you're not allowed to retire from Twitter.
What do you mean? I got 10,000. I retired. Oh, that's a great announcement. Everybody, fam is not letting me retire. I want to retire from Twitter. I got to my 10 jizzles. I want to be done. 10 G.
You're going to be like, what's his name? Brady?
Tom Brady. I'm announcing retirement, and now I'm coming back. I'm glad you know about that, fam.
It's all over the news.
One, by the way, fam. Seeking survivors of theater airstrike. They don't care, man. They do not care. The whole media is in on this. If you watch the press conferences, not only is Jen Psaki bragging about the money that she's giving, like almost bragging, we've given $1 billion. That makes $1 billion in a week alone. Like, I want to punch you in the face that you're giving away that money. You're not helping the American citizens. You're propagating war over there and stuff like that. But the media is in the tank. They're all part of it, just like they were there in Iraq, fam. All the questions are like, why don't you give them more? Like, why don't you give them more sophisticated weapons? Why are you only giving them javelins and freaking Stinger missiles? Why not give them serious weapons? I mean, that's the mentality of the press, fam. That is where we're at.
And our guest should be here shortly. But I was just going to say that the Hunter Biden story, I talked about it with Tara yesterday. It's coming back. And all of us that were, taken off or were deplatformed or were given some sort of strike or warning for talking about this. And remember when, which magazine was it? Was it the New York Post was banned on Twitter from posting it? The whole Hunter Biden Burisma story. Well, that whole situation is coming back into play. And we just did a story on how, Zelensky has ties to Igor Kolomoisky, who was also part of the Burisma situation and how he was involved in a lot of the funding. And he is in charge of the major gas companies of the region, this, gigantic oligarch. So it's kind of crazy that all of that is happening. And I wonder if they're just going to allow Joe Biden to take some heat for it so they can push somebody else as president. They just had, what's her name, as a guest on Star Trek.
Who?
Stacey Abrams.
Oh, that's right. They never stop. They never stop. I mean, I know today I'm going to talk a little bit too about the progressives' new great idea, right? Like these people do crappy things. They do shitty things. They literally fail at their jobs and then they want to give them promotions and lift them up. We're going to actually talk about Oz's new favorite candidate for president, Ro Khanna, today. That's supposedly what we're hearing pushed through the pipeline. There's so many great things to get to today. But fam, I think that your guest that's coming on that you were able to get, what a great grab. Gonzalo Lira is going to be joining us today from the front lines of Ukraine. I got questions. We need to get answers. And this guy, I saw him on the Duran last week. Just amazing work, fam. So I'm really eager to get the message out there because I think this whole Ukraine, Russia narrative is failing. And by the way, fam, I just want to point out really quick, I'm really sick and tired of hearing leftists or progressives who are going, I'm against all wars. I don't agree with what Putin's doing, but like the both sides of this situation is so ridiculous. That to me says you have no idea or nuance of the situation and you don't understand exactly what's going on. Nobody likes war. Yeah, we get it. You got your virtue signal out of there. But to not expect Putin to strike back while they're on his border with biolabs, funding of neo-Nazis, stripping Russian culture through the whole thing on his border is beyond ridiculous. And I said this before, I'll say it again, fam. The only criticism America should be making, Americans, lawmakers, and citizens, is the fact that we went in there and changed the government in 2014, and all the blood right now is on our hands. We didn't give a damn about the Ukrainians. All we cared was starting a proxy war, and that's where we're at.
Yep, 100%. And we have to really face the consequences of what's happening, but also the fact that the world is shifting. And you're seeing the United States, the empire, lose its hold on the rest of the world. You're seeing, even Saudi Arabia, India, they understand what time it is. They understand that they have to make economic connections with Russia and especially China. And China is a really big player in this game. And that's why the United States is kind of acting like they are, because they know that everything is it's fodder. It's not real. They don't have, the dollar isn't the almighty powerful dollar that it was during World War II. This time around, it's not the same thing. So I think that they're kind of grasping for more power at this point. Oz, if you want to go to pasta, I'm going to try to contact the guest and make sure everything's good, and I'll be right back. Okay.
And now the end is near. The time has come. It's just me speaking. And so I hope that I can't see the studios, Oz. It's just me, my beautiful face. I hope everybody's enjoying the looks and stuff of the studio. It's great. I love it here. You can see we still haven't even completely set up. I'm still using my laptop, but we're going to do a lot of fun things in the studio. Steve should be here within the next couple of days. Monday, we're going to get it rocking, and we're going to just build the best morning show. And then also, we're going to be doing stuff via satellite with fam on the Convo Couch Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And who knows how that schedule will go. Maybe we can add a day. Maybe we can move some time around. I got to get a hold of Shanda. We haven't done it to hell and back in a while, but the plans are to move that to the day, not so much at night. So I'm going to be like a daytime person. I'm going to switch my whole lifestyle to do this and stuff. So please Guys, if you do get a chance, this right here is the National Review Journal. It's the not national, the Las Vegas Review Journal. Grab your local papers wherever you're at. See what they're doing for their world politics, their foreign policy. Everything that's here that they put on this local paper when it comes to foreign policy is from the AP. And that's the problem, is when you only get the AP's opinion, you're just going to get one direction. You're not going to get any pushback. And that's been the problem this whole time. When politicians or lawmakers refuse to debate somebody or have somebody who has a different opinion, that's just kind of pushing propaganda at all times. And that's the shame about RT, right? RT was taken down from YouTube. RT constantly had people on with different opinions. There was always a little dispute going on, a little debate. And I think that's really important, because when you debate with people who think differently than you, you're going to come up with different answers. But this whole situation reminded me, when it comes to the Ukraine, about why I became a Democrat. If you can think back in the days, guys, with the Iraq war, George Bush was in power. A lot of us who were in foreign policy were very confused. Like, wait a second, you already went into Afghanistan. We went in there like crazy. We were hunting for Osama bin Laden. The Taliban had provided supposedly cover for Osama bin Laden. So therefore, we went into Afghanistan, into the mountains, overturned that government, removed the Taliban from power because we were upset from what was going on. But then we made this pivot, and instead of going into Saudi Arabia, because that's where most of the hijackers came from, we went into Iraq. And it was really weird. It was like, in World War II, instead of going and, attacking the Germans for what they're doing, you're attacking Switzerland instead. So a lot of neocons at that time who were driving had the wheel, who were driving the bus, they made all these decisions. And I think that was a time where you saw a lot of people become Democrats, because it was like, oh my God, the conservatives, the Republicans, they're ridiculous. And they were just, okaying this war. They were taking what the mainstream media was saying. And they made some really horrible choices. And when you talk to a lot of people at the dinner table, you talk to people at Thanksgiving dinner table, they were justifying the reasons for going in there. I don't see as much of that now with the situation, but I do see a lot of the neoconservatives and the conservative-minded people who still kind of make this whole argument that what Putin is doing is part of an expansion of the Soviet Union. It couldn't be anything further from the truth. This is not about expanding the Soviet Union. Why would he do it now all of a sudden? This is about a puppet government, the Ukrainian puppet government on the border of Russia, pushing aggressions and really trying to start a proxy war. It almost feels like the United States, the foreign policy aspects, and that's the whole thing right now. I think a lot of people, a lot of conservatives, a lot of people watch Fox and whatnot, they get offended when we're very critical of foreign policy, right? Like they sometimes can say, that seems a little bit un-American that you're feeling that way. But you have to understand that it's not a country, it's not a nation state pushing these wars. It's oligarchs. It's the 1%. It's the corporations that are going to make a ton of money, like your military industrial complex, your Raytheons, your Boeings, but also is fact too as well. Like regular corporations like Nestle and Coca-Cola make a ton of money when we're overseas. That was one of the things we were looking at, the funding of the Pentagon during the Iraq war. They were charging like $9 a Coke. $9 a Coke. And I get it. You got to get it over there. You got to fly it over there. But $9 a Coke, they were making so much money hand over fist. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a nation state. So when people are very critical, like me and Fiorella are, of what our foreign policy is, I know we've been sold a bill of goods in school. Oh, we were fighting the Nazis. We were Captain America. We were liberating people. We were spreading democracy. We were showing the free way of life and stuff like that. That's really not the truth of what's going on. Like I said, it's individuals. Look at this last situation when it came to the boop boop. How many people made money? How much money did the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation make? How much money did Pfizer make? How much money did Moderna make? You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden you're going to say they care for us and stuff. If they ever cared for us, they would give us Medicare for all. They would give us health care. They didn't, And I saw, like I said, I saw that meme this morning where a lady was screaming. She's like, you're running your agenda. You're playing your games here. This isn't about really, a humanitarian work. You gave the people at home nothing for 2 years. You gave them a $1,400 check and a $600 check. In 2 years, businesses closed left and right, small businesses and stuff. And now you're sending $1 billion over, and they're bragging about it. They're bragging about it. They're not even saying, oh, you know what? Well, we have to cut some programs at home. People are going to have to tighten up. They're going to pay a little bit extra for their gas. I'm sorry, we're going to have to cut the meals program, the Meals on Wheels program, the after school food program, whatever the case. Maybe they didn't say anything like that. They brag about it. Why? Because we take it, because we don't push back, because we don't fight, because we allow it to happen. And they constantly keep us divided with each other, constantly. And that's the big issue, what's going on nowadays. So it really is sad with this whole situation. But what we need to do as independent journalists, and thank you guys for putting us in the position. Really, I am so humbled. On my phone now, I have the actual texts of the super rays that come in, of the people who re-up their subscription. I can't thank you guys enough for putting me and Fiola in a position to do this and stuff like that. And the every single time I see you guys give the love, it makes me, give myself a pat on the back and say, keep going, keep doing this, because you're doing something right. You're providing a service. You're providing real information. And election season's coming up. And, I'm hoping that some people are knocking on the Convo Couch's door, because we understand elections. We know elections. And for us to go and look at other elections in other countries and come back home and report and say, hey, guys, we got a serious problem over here. Our elections really are bunk. We went and saw elections in Nicaragua that blow our elections out of the water. It's time to make those change. Fam, I'm sorry I'm babbling. You're back.
So our guest is still not here. So why don't you just go ahead with the next two topics first, and then I'll figure out what's going on.
Okay. Well, let me read some super rays. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. And Oz, I want to say this. I know you're listening, Oz. I want to better it's always appreciated on the couch. You're always appreciated on the couches could be a lot better, a lot stronger. I know. Trey Wright, thank you for the super ray contribution. He says, howdy, fam. Howdy, Trey. Hope you're doing well. Let us know what good movies are out there now we can go see. I want to go see a movie. I haven't seen a movie in so long. Man, it's been crazy. I think the last movie I saw in the movie theater was the Joker movie. Crazy. Can we hear Fee do the emphatic, always appreciated on the couch? Fam, can you do it for us?
No, I don't do tricks.
Fam, somebody requested, they paid money for it. It's only proper that you come on, do it, fam.
Definitely not when you ask like that. So
okay.
you
Sorry
for the ask.
Sorry, game.film. I tried for you. I tried the bribing way. It didn't work. Chris Leone, thank you so much for the super great contribution. Always appreciated on the couch. Hello, guys. Congrats on the new studio. Not too shabs. Not too shabs at all. It's pretty beautiful. Will Phoebe moving to Las Vegas with you, Pasta, or just you? Also, can you guys have on Robert from Blazing Press on? He is on the right, but he is very accurate on the global reset and all those topics. Plus, it's always nice to interview someone with a different perspective. Robert is on Rockfin and Locals. We will check it out. There's the Liberty Report just came to the Liberty Weekly, I believe it's called, just came to Rockfin. And that dude is some dude. He's like a libertarian hanging out in the Midwest. I'm going to tell you right now, the story I'm going to be doing on Monday is going to be very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Just mind blowing in my mind. I made the prediction, ladies and gentlemen, when we were talking about this, and it was in DC when I got that information, fam. I don't know if you can kind of verify this. I said, listen, guys, from what we understand right now, the HHS is now directing hospitals to no longer report COVID deaths. Instead, they wanted information on pediatrics, right? And we did a whole little video. We had our boy, James Roguski. If you haven't checked out his Substack, please do. His new article that will be coming out. We're going to be talking about it on Monday. I've been doing some research on this thing. I'm not quite there yet, but we're hearing stories and talks right now. In fact, in one of these papers in here, I saw it the other day. China has reported some of the cases. We did it on the show a couple of days ago. The most amount of cases in one day since February 2020, right? We heard about the Deltacron. So these things make you kind of raise your eyebrows. But the thing that makes me think that possibly the COVID protocols might be coming back is the fact that the WHO is trying to have, and I'm going to do a story on this. I'm going to really dive in this. Fam, they're trying to create a global treaty that has a set of protocols for any type of, I I don't want to say virus, because it could be anything else. It's more than just a virus. Any type of virus that comes out there, they're going to have a set of protocols that will supersede what the nations are doing, because they were not happy that in the states, a lot of individual states, a lot of individual counties, they made their own rules and made their own decisions on what they thought was best for their citizens and what was going to go on. So the fact is, they want to have a way to get around that this time, and they want to be able to supersede what other counties and local municipalities are going to be doing. So they're going to try to create a treaty that is a set of global rules for viruses and pandemics next time around. So that's making me think that, oh no, here they go. It might be back on again. By the way, April 10th in Los Angeles, to defeat the mandates rally will be there. I will be one of the MCs until they kick me off the stage and verified that I'm going to be one of the MCs. I don't know who the other MCs will be, but it's going to be a long event on April 10th in Los Angeles. Defeat the mandates. They just made their announcement. You can go to the highwire.com, Del Bigtree site. There's a video over there that's going to be talking about a little cut about what we've witnessed in DC before. But April 10th, I will be in Los Angeles, back in Los Angeles, to hopefully MC one of the Defeat the Mandates. But you never know, because they change things around, fam. But right now, I'm there.
They should do some criticism. They should do like a trailer with like some of the speakers and some of the people that are going to be speaking, because all that trailer showed was what happened in DC. It had zero information about what's happening in California. And if you want people to go, you should give some information. It was a little bit.
That was just Dell releasing it before. They were supposed to release something a couple days ago. That was a week ago, Friday, that he had released that himself. So that was just Dell and the High Wire. They're supposed to give out a new video, a lot of information. That should be coming any day soon. It might even already be out. In fact, I'm going to check after to see what's going to be going on for the next April 10th event.
Okay. So fam, let's just go with the POTUS story, and then I'll check on whatever's happening, but I have to get out of here regardless. So I'll make sure that he comes on with you or whatever, but
no problem.
I have a flight to catch.
You got it. Slide 8, section 2. Bernie progressives want Silicon darling Ro Khanna for president, fam. I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are. We had the whole situation where Fax Blumenthal caught him, started asking him certain things. What did he call it? The far left. He said the far left.
That tweet.
He did delete that tweet. That tweet. That's how crazy he is and stuff. But he got caught there. I think you had a great tweet. How it was then, how it's going now. What is
how it started and how it's going. Boomer.
Okay,
yeah. So basically, he had talked about the Orange Revolution before, and how we got involved and talked about the neo-Nazi problem, and then he was completely just dismissing it, talking about exaggerating and lying about Putin killing mothers and children, and when Max asked, what do we get out of this? He was like, Americans get to stand up for democracy and freedom. And it was just the most cringe moment. And this is a guy who is Silicon Valley's darling. He's definitely, within big tech. His wife, we know, owns so much stock. He's definitely not, he's been this guy that has been trying to make his way up to be, senator, to be the next big thing. And anybody who's been paying attention in California politics knows this. A lot of the progressives wanted to lie themselves just because he said a couple of good things about Bernie, and because he went on Jimmy Dore. He tried to get these progressives into his little hand and to play this game. But he's definitely a status quo politician who is seeking a career opportunity, and he's going to take this opportunity to run for president. I don't think he's going to win, or I don't think he's going to be irrelevant, but I still think this is oh, here you go. Here's your progressive, Bernie crack sort of thing to kind of get the morons to play into this game. And you said earlier you were excited about election season. I'm not excited about American election season at all. I think it's one giant theater. I don't want to interview any candidates. I am done. If you want to interview candidates, you go right ahead. Third party candidates, all of them, they all suck. All of them. They're because we don't have fair elections in this country, and they are literally not addressing the fact that we don't have fair elections. They keep acting like somehow they're going to get in and they're going to win and they're going to change the system. you cannot change this system in this way through electoralism. Do you realize what's happening right now? How they're trying to wage a proxy war with Russia via Ukraine? There's like you see how they're manipulating news, how they literally obliterated RT from YouTube, from all of the direct TV channels, from every channel. I think another company too just got rid of them. This is a bigger enemy that we're facing. You're not you can't vote this out, right? You're gonna have to do something else. And so I don't care.
Well, I have
There's
a question.
A lot of people emailing us. Oh,
Yeah.
can you please? No. Like I think the change can happen through city council, through local, for people who are doing like local things. I support that. But as far as like electoralism being, the change, I don't see anybody being like, hey guys, our elections aren't fair. Why don't we do this? Not the People's Party, not the Green Party, not the PSL. None of those people are doing crap.
Well, fam, I have two candidates that I know that are all about election integrity and want to make some very big changes in election integrity. And I think that there's a plan. And one of those candidates we've talking, his name is James Bradley. He's running for senator, right, in California. He is a Republican, but we've been talking about election integrity for quite some time. And he is trying to come up with a plan, I think, as well, to understand that once the election is called, what do you have to do to protest? So that's something I've told him, that, like, listen, and I wanted to share this with all the progressives, right? I wanted to share this with Shahid Buttar and the Angelica Dueneses and all those people who were running before, to say, as soon as the election is called, you immediately protest it. And I don't care, if you're going to be called a sore loser, whatnot. No, you want to make sure that that vote is properly counted for the benefit of the people out there. So there's so many areas and things you can ask for. You can ask for ballot images. You can ask for tracking mechanisms. What's that?
Didn't we just try this? Like, didn't
Nobody did it. Nobody did it because they were afraid to. What they did was, a little bit after, they started asking questions and whatnot, but they accepted the results right away. You know what I'm saying? And that's something they can't do. And that's something that, like in the media, they say, well, their challenger hasn't conceded yet, whatnot. And that challenge is, has to have a press conference and immediately protest the elections. Immediately. I'm talking like on election night when they call it. This is what our tracking people are.
If you have a Republican doing that now, it's not going to be taken seriously. That's the other thing. Like, they control this whole narrative. I just don't see a way or a reason to support electoral politics at all at this point. Like, because it's so gypped. Like, even if one guy tries to protest, you know how much money that's going to take to continue this whole thing. We went through it with Rahi Rab. We went through it with all these people. Eventually, people give in, they sell out, or they're like, okay, well, we can't do this. And then they dip out. Like, because the system is structured to make it so. Yeah. And unless you're ready to start doing some direct actions prior to that and to expose the mechanisms behind the election, I think it's all talk.
Yeah, there's two candidates I said that are doing that now. There's, Bradley has lawsuits. Mark Fincham is the other guy that we met in Arizona. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He's the other guy, and he has a whole bunch of solutions, videos on how we make these elections straight. That's why, to me, fam, the most important position right now of each state usually is the Secretary of State, because 9 times out of 10, they control the elections. You know what I'm saying? Or control the process of the elections. And that's something we still have to highlight left and right. I mean, I get you. Like, I don't think there's any chance whatsoever. This whole mentality of like, we just got to vote harder, fam. Vote harder. It's not going to work. We know that. But calling out the elections for what it is, that's why I think when we go do our things, we can go to Nicaragua, we're like, look at it, ladies and gentlemen. It just took this lady 5 minutes to vote. The average time to vote is 4 minutes. The longest it took was 8 minutes. Like, this is ridiculous. Why does it take so long in our elections? There are no drop boxes. Guys, why do they have election on a Sunday, on a holiday, when everybody can get done?
Narrative, Costa. Yeah. They have the narrative, and the two people that you say are good candidates talking about this are Republicans. So as long as we got to find a Democrat too now. We got to find a Democrat.
Well, I don't care. We got to find an independent, anybody who's going to call out elections. I don't know. I don't claim to have the answers, fam. I'm just going to constantly highlight the problems, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm going to do. I don't know what we can do. I agree with you, fam. You're not going to vote harder and vote your way out of this. I get it.
So did you have something on Ro Khanna?
We have a few things on Ro Khanna. Khanna has been very critical, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know, India and Narendra Modi, who's had a relationship with Putin, India and Russia have kind of formed this bond over the past 8 years. And of course, India does not agree to go along with the sanctions and is not just listening to the United States and whatever they're doing. So Ro Khanna was very critical of them. And here he put up his tweet. A few Indians do not like that I have vocally criticized India for abstaining from condemning Putin's horrific murder of mother and children. My job is to stand up for America and human rights, not be an apologist for India when they are clearly in the wrong. I did have the numbers down there. Let me just tell you, and I made I put a comment under it. I said, ratioed. He got so ratioed so hard on this, fam. Oh my Lanta. And do you listen to this shit? I'm not here criticized for abstaining from condemning Putin's horrific murder of mother and children. These progressives really know what the fuck is going on over here. They really know how to emotionally move people. What happened to the last 8 years when they were bombing and shelling people in the Donbass region, Ro? You don't care about them at all?
It was children that were dying.
Yeah.
A lot of children.
Civilians.
Yeah.
Civilians.
For 8 years. 14,000 people.
Yeah. And it's all mostly civilians and stuff. Mostly civilians they killed. Sabby Sabs put up a tweet. And here it is, fam. Sanders camp quietly pushes Khanna for presidential bid. Fam, I think this might come into play. Obviously, the elections are so false, right? Or we believe them to be somewhat, not the best. They're not, the framework is really messed up. So you really can't just stand behind them until we fix those things. But if something happens with Joe, I mean, God, something happens with Joe every day, and then he decides not to run, and then we're thrusted back into this whole well, they're going to have a primary and people are going to jump into the mix. You might see Ro Khanna jump into the mix. And here we go again. I think it will be if there was another primary, you'd see Kamala, Buttigieg, Ro Khanna for sure. I don't think you'd see Bernie Sanders come out and try to run again. Do you think Elizabeth Warren might run again if that's the case, fam?
I mean, probably. I mean, if they can throw in as many contenders as they can, they will.
Yeah. And just distract us with this whole bullshit. I'd be interested to see it because I'd love to see the virtue signaling left and right, in that whole situation. That would be very, very interesting. Let's lead some super rays. You got anything else to say about that? The bid for Ro?
I just think it's stupid. I just think that these progressives haven't budged since 2015, 2016. They're still doing the same thing. They're still having the same type of arguments. They're still falling for the same traps, the same propaganda. And at the end of the day, if who I was in 2015 is different than who I am now, and that's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to progress. You're supposed to outgrow people. You're supposed to understand that things move. And they haven't moved. They're still trying to elect progressives into the Democratic Party using the same type of vapid, superficial language to try to get more of them into believing in this idea that you can reform things. I'm not a reformist type of mentality. I'm not saying you have to have that you have to go and kill a bunch of people and that you have to go crazy. But I am saying that that's going to happen if we don't do something to stop it from happening. And so my whole thing is people are just not affected enough monetarily, I think, to realize how bad things are. And unfortunately, I think if things keep going the way they're going with this whole situation in Russia, Ukraine, they're going to start feeling it. And a lot of people are going to start feeling it. And if the pandemic didn't do it, the post-pandemic, right? And then this sort of control that you're talking about, perhaps extending it, and with this whole war situation and the inflation and the gas prices and the food shortages, I think that should do it for a lot of people. And I think the empire is falling. I think the empire is decaying. It's in decay. And I think a lot of Americans are going to start understanding what that means. In the long run, I think the East is going to be better off than the West. We're seeing this power shift happening before us. And the whole Narendra Modi comment, or the whole India comment by Ro, and you should have put Anya's tweet, because Anya clapped back at him and said, you know, as an Indian American, she is proud that India had its own sovereignty, it has been independent in its sovereignty. And it's, you know, it's this whole thing with India. Economically, it's suicide right now to try to join the West. Everybody know, if it was a different time period, they would have done it. But now you have China. And so that is also key into why Putin, I think, went in when he did, because now there's a shift. And I think the shift is all, you know, geopolitics and analyzing and all of that. We can all talk about it all day. But when Americans start feeling what that means at home, when they start realizing, oh, we're an import nation and we don't make anything here anymore, that makes us dependent on everybody else. Then they'll start realizing what that means and how that affects them. So this is just more games by the progressives, more wishful thinking. How it's just the ways to manipulate emotionally, like you say, to get them to fall for yet another progressive who has the same foreign policy as George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and alt-right neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
Yeah, and that's the sad part for me, is seeing some people go out and like, I stand for Ukraine, and seeing people buy into this whole thing. We had an old activist friend of ours who put up, I stand with Ukraine stuff. And like the whole mentality is like, if you're gonna be critical, I don't want to hear your Trump rhetoric. It's like they're still falling for the bullshit again.
I know.
It's like, God dang it, don't you guys know anything? You know, and I'm glad to see some people. I wish I would have caught Anya's tweet, because that would be fire. I wish I would have put that up. I'm really sorry. I was kind of working with janky internet yesterday. But also the interesting thing to kind of also look in the future, fam, is that India and China have very bad relationships, right? They don't like each other at all. However, Russia has been kind of acting as a buffer of sorts. You know, Putin and Narendra Modi have kind of had a lot of trade deals, a lot of agreements with each other since they've both come into office, since Modi's come into office. And by the way, the India election is this year, I believe Modi's done. I think it's 10 years of Narendra Modi, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's done. So India might have an election this year. But it's going to be interesting as they move further away from the West. And you saw India's like, no, we're not playing your game anymore. We don't need to play your game anymore. Exactly. Like you said, fam, and that's a great thing. But how are they going to interact with China and India and Russia? It's going to be very interesting, because there's a lot of bad blood between those three countries. They seem to be working it out, and they seem to be like, hey, listen, if America is going to be huffing and puffing and doing these proxy wars all the time, if they're going to have over close to 1,000 bases or whatever around the nation and stuff like that, if they're going to be in our waters, we have no choice but to join together. And that's something, as an American citizen, you know, they're going to try to crush our dollar. So we should be very like on top of our government, saying like, what are you doing over here? We want you to build relationships with these people, not put them in a corner and think that you're the old United States that can force people to do whatever. At the end of the day, if we get cut off, because like you said, we don't make anything anymore, it's the American people who are going to suffer, not the 1%, not the corporations. It's the mom and pop places that will go under. It's the citizens that will be out on the street. Like I said, 700,000 homeless people right now on the streets, and we're giving billions of dollars again away in weapons to another country that we shouldn't be even messing with.
Okay, so Gonzalo is here.
Gotcha.
He's here.
This is going to be lit, fams. Get on in, share this. This is Gonzalo over here.
Costa, what time is it?
Right now, it is 11:17.
Okay, I'll stay for some of this, and then I got to dip out. So I'll just dip out when I dip out.
Guys, share this right now. This is going to be awesome. This is Gonzalo Lira. He's actually in Ukraine right now.
Do you have a camera?
I can't turn it on, but yeah, I'm here in Kharkov. There's been like some shelling going on. I'm not quite clear what's going on. It's about 8:15 in the evening, and it's dark outside. And as of late, there's been like some very serious shelling. The Russians have been getting closer over the last week. You can tell because the sound of shelling is just getting closer every day. And but it's been very methodical, very slow. And insofar as like the basic services are concerned, everything works here. Did you? I don't know if you heard that. Hang on.
Yeah.
We already
We
got
heard
Gonzalo.
You did hear it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So anyway, the services work. You know, most important
You cut out for a second.
over here.
There you go.
Electricity, water, sewage. So the server and I'm here, and it are going to this war next couple of weeks. I would say that by the end of April, it'll be over.
Okay. So you're saying that by the end of April,
Hello.
the Russian army will have pretty much taken over the key areas that they needed to take over.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, Gonzalo.
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
great.
like I was saying, that the services work generally, and yeah, the city is mostly abandoned. I would guess that roughly 3/4 of the population has left,
Okay.
and Kharkov is one of the major battles. I would say the third most important. The most important at this time is the battle taking place in eastern Ukraine, where the main Ukrainian army group has been surrounded by the Russians. And that's roughly 60,000 soldiers, although the exact number is not clear at this time. And they've been surrounded in various pockets. And the key issue is that the Ukrainian army does not have any gasoline. So they can't really maneuver out of the position that they're in.
Mhm.
And they're running out of food and water, and there's no way to get them resupplied. So their fate is kind of like inevitable, that they will be captured and forced to surrender or annihilated, one or the other. I mean, it's very clear what's happening. And like I said, the Russians are winning this war decisively. And what's very bizarre is to hear all these accounts from the West of saying how the Ukrainians are winning, that they're beating back the Russians. It's kind of crazy. I don't quite understand. I mean, I understand what's going on. They're trying to keep morale up with lies, and paint the Russians as if they're incompetent and that they're losing, but they're not losing at all. I mean, if this is losing, I want to lose all the time like this, because they're winning. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's. Can you tell us, give us a little significance of where exactly Kharkov is and
Sure.
how far the Russians will? Because people, the American media, like you just told us, they gave this story of the great underdog. The Ukrainians are fighting back the big bear, and that gives the Congress more reasons to give more money and weapons to the Ukrainians, our U.S. tax dollars, while we don't even have nice things at home when we have some of these people on the streets, for crying out loud, and they've just kicked almost $1 billion now. Can you give us a little significance of exactly where Kharkov is and how much further the Russians will advance past Kharkov, if they will at all?
Yeah, Kharkov is about 25, 30 miles from the border with Russia. And it's the second largest city of Ukraine. And it is to the east of Ukraine. It is largely ethnic Russians, and it speaks Russian exclusively. And that's one of the big problems of Ukraine, that you have two populations, one ethnically Russian and the other ethnically Ukrainian. And the Russians are kind of like indifferent to Ukrainians. I mean, they don't care one way or the other, but the Ukrainians have a very big chip on their shoulder about Russians. And so the Ukrainians, when they are in power, in political power, they tend to abuse the Russian citizenry, which is basically what's been going on in the Donetsk region for the last 8 years, that they've been shelling them. And something like 16,000 people in Donetsk and Lugansk have been killed because of this shelling. So anyway, Kharkov, like I said, is the second largest city. But the Russians, what they have been doing is they've been pretty much ignoring the cities and surrounding them, but ignoring them and really focusing on breaking the Ukrainian armed forces. And the way that they've been doing that is a very typical Russian way, which is it's advance until they meet resistance. And then when they meet resistance, they push that resistance a little bit, then pull back and surround the resistance, right, into what's called cauldrons. And people should understand that this is a typical Russian move. And by doing these cauldrons, what happens is that they surround the enemy, and then they slowly start squeezing them closed. Okay, and this is a tactic that they've used since the beginning of the 19th century, and that's what they've basically been doing in all of Ukraine. They've advanced into the country, and whenever they meet any kind of resistance, they just go around it and surround it. Now, the important thing from the Russians' point of view is to, either get the surrender or destruction of the main Ukrainian army, which is, like I said, in eastern Ukraine. It's farther south from where I am. And that army, like I said, is about 60,000 strong. And that's their number one priority. Kiev and Kharkov, which are the largest city is Kiev and the second largest is Kharkov, they're surrounded or fairly surrounded pretty much. And the Russians don't have any interest in doing what Americans do. See, what Americans do, the American mode of war is to have the Air Force go in and destroy everything. Destroy the electrical grid, the telephone grid, destroy water supply, destroy hospitals, destroy everything. And then once the entire city is turned to rubble, then they roll in with their army. That's the American mode of war. And the Russians, they don't think that way at all. What they want to do is they want to capture Ukraine with as little damage as possible. And so what happens is that in Ukraine, you have some areas where you see like, oh, they blew up a building or something like that. But yeah, it's because there were enemy fighters who were hiding there. But in general, the cities are intact. I mean, I'm here in Kharkov, in the center of the city. And I can tell you that all in all, for a city of 1.4 million, 1.6 million people, it's in pretty good shape. I mean, like I said, services work, electricity, even cable providers work, okay? It's not the way Americans go to war. Americans, like I said, they destroy cities. They destroy the city completely, and then they roll in. But the Russians have no intention of destroying these cities because they have to administer them later. And so what they want to do is surround them and slowly strangle them until the fighters in these cities surrender. That's their goal.
So Gonzalo, I have a question then, because everything that's plastered in Western media right now is regarding the theater bombing, and how people have survived and they're coming out of the rubble and they're taking all these photos. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because what we're seeing contradicts what they're showing.
A lot of it is going to be propaganda, okay? And a lot of it is going to be deliberately using civilians as human shields. Because that's one of the things of the Zelensky regime. They have gotten into the habit of using civilians at gunpoint as human shields, because they're just pigs. They're as simple as that. They're just pigs. And I do not understand. Well, I do understand. Zelensky has great PR, and that's why everybody thinks that he's a hero. He's not a hero. He's an animal, and his entire government, his entire regime, they're pigs. In like American History X, the neo-Nazi crazies in American History X, that's what the Zelensky regime is. I'm not kidding, and I'm not exaggerating. And during this war, what they have done, and I can tell you with first last names, they have kidnapped, tortured, and murdered 2 mayors. They have kidnapped and tortured at least one member of their own parliament. And they have video of this, by the way. It's not like me saying this. I have video, and it's up on my Telegram channel, okay? They have video of them torturing some famous MMA fighter that had once sparred with a Russian, okay? They're that kind of crazy. They're crazy, right? And that the United States is supporting them, it's just it's that they're supporting the wrong guy. It's as simple as that. And it's not that I'm a Putin apologist. I'm not. There are lots of things that you can criticize about Vladimir Putin. But sometimes you have to pick between evil and lesser evil, okay? There are no good guys and bad guys. No, sometimes you have to pick between a guy who's horrible and a guy who's really, really horrible. And the Zelensky regime, they're animals, as far as I'm concerned. There are a lot of journalists who have disappeared, and it's not clear if they're dead or if they've gotten like lost in the shuffle, because there are a lot of people moving around. I mean, you all know that there are over 3 million people who have left Ukraine and are now in Western Europe. Now, because of that shuffle, it's unclear if a lot of these journalists have been killed or they've been kidnapped and are being held, or if they are flowing out into Western Europe, because there's a lot of flux going on. We won't know for a good long while. Oh man, there was some explosion over there, but I can't see it from where I am. Anyway.
That's crazy. You're like doing you're online. You're here now, ladies and gentlemen. Look at us. And we hear explosions around Kharkov. Please continue, Gonzalo. I think that's crazy.
Sure. So you got to understand that the Zelensky regime is corrupt. Before this whole situation, this conflict, the Zelensky regime had shut down 4 television stations that were critical of him. He has had journalists, beaten up, or his regime has had journalists beaten up. And you also have to understand that Zelensky is an actor, okay? He is not the actual person in charge. The actual people in charge here in Ukraine at this time are a collection of Azov Battalion, S-14 members, and Right Sector members, all of them basically neo-Nazis. And I'm not saying this, you know how like in the United States, the left calls like J.K. Rowling a neo-Nazi? And that's just like nonsense, right? No.
These are real Nazis.
Actual tattooed neo-Nazis like in American History X. I mean, like the real deal, okay? They're proud of it, okay? They're not like, saying, oh, no, don't call me that. I'm not that. No. They're like, yeah, I'm a National Socialist, and I want to kill you or anybody else that I don't like, right? They are that. And that is the people that is being supported by the Biden administration. And by the way, they said they're going to send like $1 billion worth of equipment or whatever the hell. The Russians are going to blow it up before any Ukrainian gets their hands on it, okay? No, that weaponry, that material will never be used by the Ukrainian armed forces because the Russians have the ability to blow it up. Last Sunday, they sent, 30 cruise missiles to a training facility. What was the name of this place? I have it here in my notes. Hang on. It was called Yavoriv, just outside of Lviv. This was about 12 miles from the border with Poland, right? Now, do keep in mind, Ukraine is huge. It's about the size of Texas, okay? So they hit this town called Yavoriv, which is the place where the International Peacekeeping and Security Center is located. Now, it sounds very innocuous. International Peacekeeping and Security Center. But it's basically a NATO training ground, okay? And it's something that the Russians have been pissed off about for years. And well, all of these at this International Peacekeeping Center, right? That's where they had the barracks for all these foreign fighters. There are a lot of Brits, a lot of Americans, a lot of people from other NATO countries, and also from South America, Brazilian and Chilean fighters. And they sent the Russians out of the blue. Well, actually, not quite out of the blue. On Friday, the Russian Foreign Ministry said that any foreign fighter was fair game, and they would be treated not as fighters subject to the Geneva Convention, but as common criminals, and they would be shot, summarily executed, just as if they were common looters or criminals, okay? And they said that, and people kind of like didn't believe them, but Sunday morning, they sent these missiles, 30 of them, and leveled the barracks where these people were located. And the final body count at this time is over 200 foreign fighters. And the ones who survived, they got the hell out of there. They're gone. They left Ukraine, okay? Because the Russians are not screwing around. The Russians are very, very serious. They're not going to tolerate any outside interference, not even from mercenaries or volunteers or whatever you want to call them. Yeah. And they blew them to Mars and sent all the rest running. And insofar as any foreign equipment, foreign missiles or weaponry, it's never going to get into the hands of any Ukrainian armed force because the Russians will interdict it. The Russians have better intelligence because it's their front yard.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine, like the United States decides to invade Canada and the Chinese try to help the Canadians. Who do you think is going to have a better shot at success? The Chinese, who are, 10,000 miles away or whatever, or the Americans invading Canada and they're right there? I mean, come on, you got to realize the reality of the situation. And so the Americans, they're setting themselves up for failure. They're going to get BTFO'd, something horrible, okay? I mean, this thing that happened on Sunday with these 200 plus foreign fighters dead, nobody's quite sure how many there are because nobody's releasing the actual figures, but it's known that it's over 200, okay? Because people talk. And a lot of the guys who were there, who ran off back to Europe, they've been posting on social media. They're being called the Reddit warriors because a lot of them like congregated on different Reddit boards. And they're all talking about the people that they knew, that they had met there, that they were starting to train with and all that, who got killed, okay? Because they got hit like in the early morning hours. And so most of them were in their bunks sleeping. And you say, well, that's a low blow. Dude, it's war. I mean, what the hell you think?
Yeah.
All's fair in love and war. That's the old saying, right? Well, And I think that also what happened was that a lot of these fighters were very used to the American mode of war, where one side has complete air superiority and just levels the other side. And so then it's like easy pickings, right? But in this case, the Russians are the ones who have air superiority. And they do have air superiority. And again, I don't quite understand this notion that, the Russians don't have complete air superiority. Yes, they do. They have complete air superiority. They can do whatever they want. And they do it with impunity. Yeah. And so the strategy of the Russians is real simple. Capture this big army of 60,000 men, which, remember, it's not that it's 60,000. The Ukrainian armed forces is a total of 250,000 soldiers, right? But the 60,000, these are frontline fighters, okay? It's not just regular army people. Now, the Russians want to capture them. Ideally, they want to capture them. But if they can't get them to surrender or desert, they're going to annihilate them. And right now, they're in the process of that, okay? Of either getting them to surrender or annihilating them. And nobody really knows because there are no press. Because the press is staying all in Kiev. A lot of them are in Lviv, which is way to the west, okay? And that's an area where the Russians haven't turned their attention. Well, this morning they did. This morning, they sent like a half dozen cruise missiles that were fired from the Black Sea, and they leveled some supply depots in at the airport. And some people are saying that those supply depots were where some Western weapons had arrived. And well, that didn't last long. I mean, if that's accurate, that weaponry is gone, okay? And it seems to be true because they didn't want to hit the actual tarmac. They hit these buildings next to the tarmac that were like storage, okay? So it's probably likely that story is true, that they hit weaponry that had arrived in Lviv. So anyway, the Russians control this. The Russians are winning. Bottom line, that's all you need to know. Yeah. And they're sewing up the country very slowly and methodically. Their primary focus is this army. Then their secondary focus is Kiev, which they've pretty much surrounded. Ultimately, they control access to it, which is the same thing, or the important part. And insofar as Kharkov is concerned, where I'm located, yeah, they pretty much surrounded it, and they're getting closer every day. And that's the state of the situation. Yeah. Anything else you want to know?
B, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the biolabs because Vladimir Putin has given a retort saying, this is what we found. We found coronaviruses, we found anthrax, we found this XYZ experiments on bats, on animals. And of course, the United States didn't get their ducks in a row because on one end you had Jen Psaki denying it on Twitter, but then Victoria Nuland came out and basically admitted them, but it's called them biological research facilities instead of biolabs, and then shifted the perspective to focus on Putin and Russia getting their hands on this. So they admitted as much, but they're saying, oh, there's nothing there. It's just research. So what is going on from the Russian end as to what the perspective is on the biolabs? Because according to the Ministry of Defense, they do have documents that they plan on releasing, from what I've heard.
Oh yeah, they've released them. They've released
Today.
them, and
When
they're
did they
genuine.
release them?
Yeah, they're totally genuine. Oh yeah, you can find them on the Russian Ministry of Defense Telegram channel, and they're floating around. And lots of people have looked at them, and yeah, they're the real thing. Okay, bottom line, see, Victoria Nuland, who's the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, she said in Senate testimony in front of Marco Rubio's committee, she said that those biolabs existed and that she was very concerned that the Russians would get their hands on that research and potentially use it against the West. Now, see, the obvious issue arises. If I have a biolab and I'm like, I don't know, coming up with a cure for Alzheimer's disease, right? What's my worry? Well, my worry is that, this invading Russian army might either on purpose or by accident destroy my research, right? But I'm not worried that they'll capture my research because I'm working on the cure for Alzheimer's, right? It's harmless, or on the contrary, it actually helps people, right? But it's not something that you can use as a weapon. But if I have a biolab and I'm worried that the Russians will capture my research and use it as a weapon, well, what does that mean? It means that I'm not a research laboratory, I'm a bioweapons research laboratory. Come on, right? That's obvious here. And she said it herself. I saw that testimony, right? She said that she was worried that the Russians would get their hands on the research. Then if she's worried, then obviously they were working on something dangerous, something that could be used as an offensive weapon. So it's just a pack of lies, Bottom line, the Americans were funding 26 research laboratories that were developing biological weapons. And from the material that's been released, they were trying to gather DNA from Slavic people
Exactly.
of Russian origin, to tailor the biological weapon to affect them more than other people with different genes. That looks like genetic weaponry, if you ask me. And the documents that have been released by the Russian Ministry of Defense, nobody has said that they're fake, okay? And if they were fake, people would have spotted it. The typical autists on 4chan and the various, dark web sites would have poked holes on it the second those documents came out. Nobody has. They're genuine. They're the real thing. And yeah, the United States was funding this stuff. Mm-hmm. And now they're freaking out and trying to cover it up, like the cowardly bastards that they are. Sorry for my language, but
they could use it as an excuse for the next pandemic, right? Like they can say, look what the Russians did. They can blame it on the Russians, whatnot. And I'd like to also point out, Gonzalo, and you can either confirm or deny that when they do these experiments, from what we've seen, it's really kind of crazy because they use the excuse that they're trying to come up with a cure or an antidote of sort, just in case a disease like this gets out. But the problem is they got to create the virus first before they create the cure. So they were really screwing with science over here and doing some dangerous testings and studies. This is why we were supposed to ban gain of function, because to come up with the cure, you have to come up with the virus first. And that is very dangerous, no?
Yeah, that seems to be the situation. I'm not that familiar with all of that kind of research, but look, it's nasty stuff. Now, the thing that's interesting about Ukraine, and the reason that it's got all of Washington freaking out, is there is a lot of secrets here. See, because this is a very corrupt country, and it's corrupt because Washington has turned it corrupt, and Western Europe to a lesser extent. They've funneled the money that was sent to Ukraine, foreign aid and that kind of stuff. It got funneled back and recycled by the politicians who were sending this money. And they created this cycle of corruption. The United States, Western Europe would send money to Ukraine, foreign aid, and the money would land in Ukraine, but then big chunks of it would be kicked off to the children of prominent politicians. Like, for instance, the son of Nancy Pelosi, the son of Mitt Romney, the son of Joe Biden, and the son of John Kerry, those four children of prominent politicians, they all were on the boards of directors of various gas companies in Ukraine. And none of them was an engineer or a specialist in the gas business. And they were all getting between $50,000 a month and $150,000 a month, depending, okay? So it's basically a payoff, you know? The moron sons of these politicians were getting a nice little sinecure, and it was being paid by the foreign aid that the United States was sending to Ukraine. And of course, in that foreign aid that went to Ukraine, it also got split off by local Ukrainian politicians. And the Ukrainian politicians would also spend some of that money on lobbyists in Washington to get more money sent to Ukraine. I mean, it was like a whole money scheme going on, okay? And so what's really clear is that a lot of people in Washington are terrified that the Russians are going to get all this dirt and just spread it out there for the whole world to see, which I, for one, I would welcome. And I'm sure that you would too, because we would get to see what American politicians are really up to in Ukraine. And as this, these bioweapons labs, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of dirt here, okay? A lot of dirt, because this is like the perfect dumping ground for all kinds of nastiness, all kinds of corruption. And the Russians coming here, they're cleaning house, okay? And that's what's got everybody in Washington freaking out. And that's why my concern at this point is that Washington with the Zelensky regime will come up with some false flag attack, probably like a chemical weapons kind of thing, to give them an excuse to send NATO forces, American forces into Ukraine. And I'll tell you right now what's going to happen to those forces. They're going to get blasted from Mars. I mean, it's going to get ugly, okay? Because the Russians are not the Iraqis. The Russians are not the Afghans. The Russians are a military peer, and they can really mess up the United States. Yeah. And I think the people at the Pentagon are the only ones right now who are kind of aware of that. They're kind of like, oh, we really, really don't want to go there, okay? And what happened to the foreign fighters last Sunday, that they got just totally annihilated, right? Annihilated. I mean, some of them hadn't even been there like, you know, a day, and they're dead, gone, right? There was, okay, this is a rumor or a story that I've yet to confirm, but apparently there was this sniper that came to Ukraine, the deadliest sniper in the world. You guys can look him up. Mm-hmm. And the story is that the guy lasted 20 minutes and he was taken out by the Russians, okay? Now, that's the story so far. I've been trying to look for confirmation, but the guy is dead. That's known, okay? He's this, I think he was a Canadian sniper, and he came like, you know, kind of like the Lone Ranger kind of thing, you know? And there was like dramatic pictures of him showing up, and he got killed, and he's dead, okay? The story is that he was 20 minutes out in country, you know, facing the Russians, and a Russian sniper took him out, okay? Now, I'm kind of laughing. I hope that, I mean, it's tragic. The death of anybody is tragic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, you know, a war with the Russians, the Americans aren't going to win. The Americans are going to lose, and lose badly, okay? And it's going to be not mere, I mean, if you thought that Afghanistan was a humiliation, this is going to be worse, because the Russians are going to win. It's their front yard.
That's what I'm saying. It's their territory. Yeah, it's their backyard, front yard. And that's the thing, because I think a lot of Americans are sold that there's nothing stronger than American military might, but this is Russian territory. This is in their border. This is their backyard. You don't go over mess in their backyard and think you're just going to easily push them over. But I also want to say that when you say that, oh, you know, it doesn't.
Sorry to interrupt. There's one thing. There's one other thing I want to mention.
Go ahead, please.
See, the Pentagon has war gamed a confrontation in Eastern Europe. They've lost every time.
Yeah, I mean, they've war gamed war with Iran, right? I think there was a whole simulation in their backyard, and they lost sometimes too as well.
That I don't know, but I do know that
It's a really popular simulation. You should look it up. They talked about it. I think they took one of the generals from the United States and they made him the general of Iran. And in that territory, in that landscape, it's when you go into somebody else's home territory, you're in foreign territory over there. Your battle is completely uphill.
Well, it's that the key issue is that the United States depends on air superiority, but total air superiority. Now, this works with rinky-dink little countries like Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. But when you're dealing with a country that has extremely sophisticated air defenses, layered air defenses, so that they're aware of things long before they are actually a threat. And once they become a potential threat, they have more than enough equipment to counteract that. Then it's a whole different ballgame. Then America does not have air superiority. It might have a slight advantage, but if the other side has more numbers, then that advantage is gone. And the Russians are going to have more numbers because, again, it's their front yard. Okay. Yeah. And so the idea of the Americans declaring a no-fly zone, for instance, first of all, that's a recipe for World War III, because basically you're saying, well, we'll declare a no-fly zone. That means that no Russian airplane can fly. And if it does fly, we'll shoot it out of the sky. Good luck, buddy, because the Russians have the sophisticated equipment to knock down your plane, knock down your missile before it comes close to a Russian missile, okay? And if they, I mean, you got to understand the reality here. You're dealing with somebody, the United States has been thinking that they are, they're the biggest guy on the block, right? But the Russians are just as big. And the other key issue, and something that the Americans don't understand, see, for the Russians, this is existential. They will go to the last man on this one. They will go as far as necessary to win. They cannot afford to lose. So when you're dealing with somebody, with an army that will do whatever it takes to win, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to go all the way? Because these guys will. And they will go all the way. And I'm not talking about nuclear. I'm talking about the will to win a war here. They will go to the last man to win this war. And so I just have to insist to people, and the only reason I'm on your show is to convince people, don't encourage this craziness. Don't encourage this insanity, because a wider war in Ukraine, number one, will destroy Ukraine pointlessly, okay? Number two, the Russians are going to win. And number three, the Washington leadership is so stupid that if they lose in a way that's too humiliating for them, they might decide, maybe it would be good to use a tactical nuclear weapon, just a little bit, just the tip, just to see what it feels like, And once you start using nuclear weapons, which I firmly believe the Americans would start using first out of a spoil sport kind of they beat us, so we're going to show them kind of attitude, because they're that immature and emotional and pathetic. I'm sorry, it's the truth. I think that the Americans would start using nuclear weapons. And once you start down that path, anything is possible. I mean, literally anything is possible. And I think that the American leadership is so stupid. I mean, come on, look at Kamala Harris. She is a moron. That woman does not have enough IQ points to walk and chew gum at the same time. And she might potentially be the president of the United States ordering God knows what. And so I'm terrified of the Americans. I mean, the Americans are what terrify me, because they're so stupid and emotional. And they don't realize the power that they are wielding and how easily a conflict like this can, go way
escalate
beyond their control.
Can escalate. And I think Putin once, he said, he quoted Albert Einstein saying World War III will be fought with nuclear weapons. World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. But I got to be honest with you, Gonzalo. I don't think that they are attempting to win this war. I've always said this before, the Americans, because they've always, the attitude of the Americans, and just hear me on this and give me your opinions, is that they don't care who wins the war. They don't care who loses the war. All they care is that they have the war, and that money is spent, and those oligarchs or those people, or the people within the military industrial complex, hey, they still got paid. Whether that weaponry was used or not, a lot of individuals made a lot of money when we sent over $1 billion in weapons. So that's my thought process there, is the fact that it's just a money scam no matter what.
I think so too. I think you're right. I think that the Americans, look, bottom line, and you can hear by my accent, I spent a lot of time in the United States. I went to an Ivy League university. You know, I got all the trimmings, and I understand the American elites very well. The United States is corrupt and pathetic. They are a dying nation, and I'm sorry, and I don't mean this in a nasty personal way. I'm not trying to belittle you personally or anybody of your audience, but it's the truth. The United States is a decadent, degenerate, dying nation, and it is lashing out. It is about to see the economic collapse that is, you know, it's already there. It's already happening. But, you know, the United States is in denial.
Yeah.
The United States is falling apart. I grew up in California in the 70s when it was truly the Golden State. And it really was a magical time. And it was beautiful. And everything worked. And there was a sense of self-confidence and a sense that, you know, the future was going to be better and brighter. There's no such sense today in the United States. Everybody feels it. In the United States right now, there's a sense of collapse. And because the United States is collapsing, the economy is collapsing. If you add on federal government debt, state debt, municipal debt, and agency debt, the United States has over 200% indebtedness versus GDP. Any other country in the world, you'd say that that country is bankrupt. The United States is bankrupt. And the only thing holding it up right now is the petrodollar, the fact that the world trades oil in the dollar. And that's why the dollar has not hyperinflated to the moon. But that's about to end now because of these stupid sanctions that were pushed by this incompetent administration. And by the way, the Federal Reserve, and I know this for a fact because I know a couple of people at the Federal Reserve, they begged the administration not to mess with these economic sanctions that would be so incredibly destructive, not to the Russians, but to the American economy, okay? But the Biden administration, they wanted to show that they were tough, and so they implemented these sanctions, and they caused a little short-term pain to the Russians. But even after barely a week of these sanctions, the ruble is bouncing back. But the United States, well, it lost all credibility with the rest of the world. And Saudi Arabia right now is exploring how to start selling its oil in the Chinese currency.
Yeah.
The other countries of the world, they want to get out of dollar assets because the Americans, they confiscated the sovereign wealth fund of the Russians to the tune of about 300 billion. Basically stole their money. And so other countries are saying, shit, man, these crazy Americans might do this to us. And so they're like pulling their money, they're dumping treasury bonds, they're doing it quietly and discreetly, but they're very serious about it. And what does that do to the American dollar? Well, the American dollar is going to go down the tubes. You are probably going to have hyperinflation by the end of 2023, okay? Because if you think that the inflation right now is bad, and it's officially at 7.5%, right? And John Williams over at Shadow Stats, he pegs it at double that amount. Shadow Stats is a really great website. I don't have any kind of financial relationship with them. I follow them, but I don't. I mean, I'm not paid. I'm not, it's just a recommendation. Shadow Stats uses the old methodology of calculating inflation, and they peg it at about 15%, okay, and rising, okay. And we all know that the inflation is really getting out of control because of not just gasoline prices, but food prices, okay? And so the United States is collapsing. And when you have a collapsing empire, a lot of times it lashes out. It lashes out because the leadership thinks that, some good war might distract from the collapse. And the thing is, the United States has nuclear weapons. And so that's the danger. That's the real danger. And I hate to say it to your audience because I understand that your audience is mostly American, but somebody has to tell you, you are a danger to the rest of the world. You, America, because as your country is collapsing, which it is, you are becoming more and more hysterical. And your leadership is responding to your hysteria and trying to get into wars so as to distract you from the collapse, distract you from the problems that you have in your country. You should be solving your problems. You should be closing up your borders and not worrying about Ukraine's borders.
Yeah.
You should be worrying about the fact that your leadership is corrupt. Your leadership steals money in sly and underhanded ways. You should be thinking about the fact that your leadership does not care about you, but only about their own pockets and the pockets of the people who pay them. You should be worried and focused on trying to keep your country together and survive this imminent collapse that you're about to experience. That's what you should be concerned about. You should not be concerned about getting into a war in Ukraine where you have no vital interest whatsoever. The only interest that is being served is to prevent some politicians, some corrupt American politicians, from being discovered. That's the only reason the United States wants to get into this war, because a lot of politicians, they did a lot of, dirty stuff in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't want it to come out.
Well, that's the problem, is that Americans ignored that, right? I'm saying unfortunately, the ruling class, and I think you've made it very clear, it's not the Americans that, are the issue, it's the leadership. And, Gonzalo, I think this goes above our elected officials.
I used to think that. I used to think that, and it's a nice sentiment. But the fact of the matter is, it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Oh, I don't believe
that. People, by the people. Well, then stand up and get rid of the government you've got. Come on.
I agree. But they got people pitted at each other. I mean, that's the issue, what's going on right now. Instead of saying, look who the issue is, it's the people upstairs. They have everybody fighting with each other. And I don't know if you know this, Gonzalo, we're election specialists over here, and we're not too fond of the framework of our elections, that they are really producing the results that the people really want. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, I'll tell you what I think personally. I think the November 2022 elections are going to be crooked as all get out. And I think that there likely won't be a 2024 election. I think that the Democrats, who are completely corrupt, I mean, the Republicans are just incompetent and paid off by big business. But the Democrats are actively evil, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that they're going to figure out a crafty way to bend the November 2022 elections. And the Republicans won't win. And everybody's like, how is this possible? How is this possible? And, nothing will be done about it. They'll just take it, They'll just take it like, prison sodomy, and they'll just take it. And then in 2024, the Biden administration or Kamala Harris or whoever is in charge, they'll figure some crafty way to suspend the election because of some emergency. Maybe they'll declare another pandemic or something like that.
Yeah,
and
possibly.
You, the United States is going down the tubes, and the people are allowing it.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe Biden and his administration and the Democrats are really in charge. I look more towards the World Economic Forum people and those heads, Council of Foreign Relationships. It seems like what we're witnessing is the controlled demolition of the American empire. And eventually everything, all news and everything will move eventually, I think, to Beijing.
You're wrong. It's not controlled. I mean, if it were controlled, if they actually had a clue as to what they were doing, then I wouldn't be so frightened. I am more frightened of the United States than of the Russians here, and I'm in the middle of a war. I mean, you guys heard it, okay? I am a lot more scared of what the United States will do because it's not a controlled demolition. It's a sinking ship, and all the rats are fighting one another. That's what's going on. And so, I mean, it would be comforting to think that there's some like World Economic Forum or Illuminati or somebody who's in charge and knows more or less what they're doing. But see, I actually grew up in the elite layer of American society. They don't have a plan. And the people who are running things, they're morons. They're stupid people. I mean, they are objectively stupid in the sense that they have a lot of IQ points and a lot of credentials, but they have no judgment. And they certainly don't have any kind of morality.
Well, how do you think they got in charge?
I beg your pardon?
How do you think they got in charge?
They got in charge because the United States created a system insofar as education and accreditation is concerned, where people who had success were those people who were willing to jump through artificial hoops not people who are actually good at stuff. And the things that the people who at any time made any kind of mistake or actually screwed up and learned from that mistake, well, they got edged out. See? And so the only people who succeeded, who kept on this rat race, and were the people who would jump through every hoop, but who would never make any mistake. And the only way that you can gain judgment is by making mistakes. You know, Chester Nimitz, who is the Supreme Allied Commander of naval forces in World War II in the Pacific.
Yep.
Well, Chester Nimitz, when he was like a second lieutenant or something like that, he grounded his ship, the ship that he was in charge of at the time. Yeah. He grounded it. And, you know, the leadership at the time of the Navy, this was like in the 1920s, and they scolded him, they reprimanded him verbally, but they didn't torpedo his career because those leaders at the time thought he's a very capable naval officer. He just screwed up. And so he was allowed to continue. And because of that screw up and other screw ups that Nimitz committed during his career, by the time he became admiral of everything, he had a lot of mistakes under his belt, i.e. he had a lot of experience, a lot of judgment. And so he was able to make the correct calls during World War II when it actually mattered. But this current system that we have is whenever anybody makes a mistake, no matter how trivial, they are automatically removed. And so the only people who get to the top are the people who are spotless. But these spotless people, since they've never made a mistake in their careers, they do not have the experience, the judgment, okay? Take a person like Jake Sullivan, who's the National Security Advisor of the Biden administration. Yep. He's a man who has only been in universities and think tanks. He's never had any kind of executive experience. He's never made a mistake in his career. And so when you listen to him, he seems very polished and very smart. But all of the decisions he has made and all the policies he has pursued are incredibly foolish and stupid. And they actually helped to create this situation, this war that we're currently in. Because he doesn't have any judgment. He only looks at the world from his lens, a very myopic lens. He doesn't have the ability to extrapolate and get into the shoes of the other guy and see how the other guy views the world and therefore come to some agreement. I mean, I personally despise Donald Trump for various reasons, but one thing I did notice is that he's a very good negotiator because he can put himself in the shoes of the other guy and realize what's important to him and try to come to some agreement that way. That's good negotiation. But see, guys like Jake Sullivan, guys like Jen Psaki, women like Samantha Powers, you know, all these people who are running the Biden administration now, they are products of this education system, of this accreditation system, of this rat race, where the only rats who get to the top are the spotless ones who have never made a mistake. But because they've never made a mistake, they always go with the flow and they never have independent judgment. They never say, hey, is this a good idea? It doesn't seem like a good idea. You see? Yeah. And that's why we have the situation we're in. We do
That's
not,
an interesting
this
perspective.
Is something that I am highly critical of the right, of thinking that there's some big conspiracy and there's some people behind the curtains pulling the strings. Well, there are lots of people behind the curtains pulling the strings, like Obama himself, for instance. He's one of the people who's trying to pull the strings on the Biden administration. But see, these people pulling the strings or whatnot, they are fighting one another on the one hand, and on the other, they're not very smart in the sense of having good judgment. I would trust the judgment of a welder in Oklahoma over one of these Ivy League educated people in the Biden administration.
Gotcha.
And I'm not kidding. And I got an Ivy League degree with honors. Thank you very much. I can tell you, man, they're morons because they don't have judgment. That's the problem. And that's the situation we find ourselves in.
It's a very interesting perspective, Gonzalo. It's kind of crazy because every time I look at these people, I'm like, all these people making the decisions, they haven't made one right decision. But yeah, the way you kind of laid that out, and you know, obviously, I think you know, I do believe there is a above a World Economic Forum and other entities pulling the strings. But can we digress really quick? I have one question, and I'll get you out of here because I think we have to speak a lot about, you know, the kind of nature of what's going on. We see some stuff on Twitter or social media.
Oh, you hear this? You hear
what's
this?
that? No. Oh, wow. I really wish your camera was working.
No, you don't see anything.
No, I know.
There's
I
no
wish
flash. It's far away.
it's far away, but you can hear it. And that doesn't sound like thunder.
No.
It sounds like something else. There's been some footage on social media that of claims of Ukrainian personnel. They've been threatening the lives of Ukrainian soldiers, and
That's
should
true.
they defect, their families
That's true.
going, "Hey, listen,
Yes.
you defect, and we're going to go kill your whole family." Have
Yes,
you
that's
witnessed
true.
any of this? And also, you had spoke, I believe, on the Duran show about the way Russians were very open to allowing Ukrainian soldiers to change their uniform and escape with their families. Can you give us a little insight to that? Because I think that the American people need to hear this.
Now, I myself have not seen that because I have not been in the war zone per se, in the actual combat areas. So I have not seen that personally, but
Okay.
I have heard enough accounts to know that it's true. That it's the real deal, and video accounts of people saying it specifically, and refugees and people filmed in such places that you know that they're not lying and that they're not crisis actors. It's the real thing. Yes, I mean it's common knowledge. It's not propaganda. It's the real deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, they threaten their families. Whether these threats are viable or not, who knows? Okay. But what's important is that the soldiers believe it. Okay. The Azov battalion, the S-14, the right sector people, all those crazy fascists, right?
Yeah.
They have used civilians as human shields. That's indisputable. Okay. And they have deliberately put weapons. This I know for a fact, that they have put weaponry near civilian locations so as to draw Russian fire and potentially destroy civilian buildings, so as to show have a PR win. Okay. And a lot of the buildings that are being shown, they show like apartment buildings blown up and stuff, and they say the Russians did it. Yeah, the Russians did it, but they did it because there was some armored personnel carrier or some tank or whatever that was parked right there deliberately so as to draw Russian fire so that they'd have a PR win. You have to understand that the Zelensky regime seems to think that if they win the PR war, they win the actual war. But see, that's not how it works. And so, yeah, the Russians are getting a lot of a very bad reputation, but they're not doing this. And what's more important is that the Russians are getting a bad reputation in the West among people who don't know any better. But the people who are actually here, they know exactly what the hell's going on. Okay?
Yeah.
And so, my phone is running out of batteries. So just want to warn you.
We'll get you out of here. Did you hear any more information about the missile that was shot down intercepted by the Russians? I believe it was a missile that was maybe even going to Belarus. The Ukrainians claim, but supposedly what happened is that it was deterred and 23 civilians were killed, I believe, in the Donetsk region.
Donetsk and Belarus are in the opposite ends of the country.
Yeah, that's the thing I didn't understand is like they were claiming that stuff and that the Russians shot this down, and yet it killed like 23 civilians. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
Do you have any more insight to that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It happened a few days ago, and it was a missile that was fired by the Ukrainians, and it was deliberately aimed for the center of Donetsk, and there was nothing there militarily that was aimed for. The Zelensky regimed armed forces fired that missile. They wanted to hit civilians. They wanted to have a humanitarian crisis. And the guys are such pigs that after that event, they used pictures of the event that they themselves had carried out.
The Russians,
They used it to propagandize their cause. They shot civilians. They fired a missile that had cluster bombs. Okay, and these cluster bombs exploded and killed a bunch of people. 23 people. And there's some video of it that was really horrifying.
Horrible.
And I saw the interview with one of the little kids who got hit by shrapnel. He got his leg cut up pretty bad, but other than that, he seemed to be okay. And stoic little Russian kid. Because also these people, these Zelensky regime people, they are ethnically Ukrainian. And because of their ideology, they think that Russians are subhuman. And so if their children die, it doesn't matter. These guys went on TV the other day, by the way, on Channel 24, which is like the big channel here in Ukraine. And one of their journalists said that what they had to do to defeat the Russians was not kill the soldiers, but kill the Russian children and kill all of them. Only that way could they truly defeat Russia and obliterate Russians from the face of the earth. That's the kind of level of people we're talking about. And dude, that's what they said. And it's been translated by multiple people, and you can find it all over the internet. These guys are nuts. I mean, nuts, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, about the missile. Yeah, it hit in the middle of the city. There was no military around it. It had been intercepted by the Russians, but its trajectory was, just more civilian stuff. And because it was intercepted, not all of the cluster munition was set off. I have no idea how that works, but people who know more than I about this kind of stuff said, yeah, that's more or less how it works, because it wasn't armed or something like that. But anyway, it still caused a mess, and 23 people died needlessly.
Yeah.
And it's clear that the Zelensky regime did it so that they could kill Russians, number one, Russian civilians. They don't care. They don't distinguish between civilians and armed forces. Number one, kill Russians. And number two, get good photographs, which they used for their own propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, they're horrible people. And the Americans want to arm that group of people. The Biden administration wants to arm that group of people.
Yeah.
Okay. And
they know they'll fire at those citizens where the Ukrainian army might not have done that. Some of them have defected in the beginning, but they know these right-wing Azov battalion, members will fire at these Russian civilians with no question.
The problem is it's not just the Azov battalion as a military unit, because you see, these people, they were instrumental in the 2014 coup d'etat, right?
Absolutely.
The so-called Maidan Revolution.
Yeah.
And see, these crazy people, they were agents provocateurs, right? And they had assembled themselves in the Azov battalion and other organizations. Now, after the coup d'etat, the Maidan, so-called Maidan Revolution, these groups were allegedly disbanded. But see, what happened was that they were pro forma disbanded, but they were dispersed throughout the Ukrainian armed forces. And so what happened was that, see, they were spread out, and they sort of like are in every area of the Ukrainian armed forces. And they have proselytized their ideology. And so a lot of other soldiers in the Ukrainian armed forces have become like them, crazy like them, okay? Yeah. And when the Russians say that they want to denazify, they're serious. Like, for instance, there was a video I saw this morning where what they did was the Russians, they had this control area of people leaving Mariupol, and they had all the men raise their shirts, take off their shirts, so that they could see if they had any tattoos, any Nazi tattoos, okay? And they found quite a number of them that had Nazi tattoos. And, there's videotape of them doing it to random civilians, anybody of military age. And, they interviewed some people and who didn't have any tattoos. And they were like, yeah, you got to do that because, they're Nazis. They're literal Nazis. And that's who the Biden administration is supporting. And my conclusion is because they don't want highly embarrassing information to come out. I think that's the bottom line on this issue. Yeah.
Gonzalo, thank you so much for joining us. When you get back to the States, you're saying the end of April, this might be all over.
I hope so.
What's to make of the Zelensky regime? Is it going to be changed? Is it going to be, how are they going to go about this? Do you think they're going to have open elections, fair elections, maybe?
No. The Russians are not going to negotiate. There isn't going to be any kind of negotiated settlement. Okay.
Because it would be looked at as a loss if they negotiate it out, right? Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, if they do negotiate it, quote unquote, it'll be like a big lie. Okay. Yeah. It's like a pretend, because the Russians have expended too much men and too much material, and they've suffered too big of an economic hit for them to just say, oh, okay, we'll do a ceasefire and sign a piece of paper. No. The Russians are going to install their own puppet regime here, but they'll install it in some clever way. I mean, the Russians are clever, okay?
Yeah.
And so they'll figure out a way to make it look like it's legitimate. But anybody with a little bit of common sense will realize that it's just a puppet regime the Russians are controlling. Yeah. And the Russian military is going to stay here for, I would guess, after the end of the hostilities, when they have everything really in hand, I would figure for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
And enough to just weed out anybody whom they're suspicious of. And they're going to leave the country when the country is completely pacified and completely neutral. They're not going to leave before then. And like I said, they have the will for it, okay? Because for them, it's existential. And so the Americans, if any American is listening to me, I'll tell you right now, tell your congressman or senator or whomever, don't get involved in this shit, because it's going to bring nothing but a heartache to the Americans. And the fear, and this is the fear that I have to emphasize. The people in leadership in the United States are so stupid that out of some weird arrogance and hurt pride, if the Russians hit them hard enough, hit the Americans hard enough, embarrass them badly enough, the pathetic Biden administration might do something irrevocably stupid, like send a nuclear weapon, like drop a tactical nuke, just to, well, we don't have to take this, we're tough, Yeah. And from there, it could spiral out of control. And so that's and this is a genuine fear. And anybody thoughtful who's following the situation will agree with me that the irresponsible leadership and the willingness to unleash unimaginable power because of hurt feelings and pride, that's how this situation can spiral out of control and end in the deaths of millions of people, literally millions of people, for no reason whatsoever. So that's my fear.
Mine too. And Gonzalo, I just want you to be safe and get back home. Well, where are you coming back to? You coming back to the States soon, or
I'm not going to go back to the States. Why would I? I don't want to live there. No way.
Well, I just want to know when we can have you back on the show, because I want to talk a little bit about maybe George Soros and his role in the Ukraine, and maybe a little World Economic Forum. Dive a little bit deeper with you, Gonzalo.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm not going to be going back to this. I haven't lived in the States in 20 years. No, I'm staying here in Ukraine. I like it here. So
nice.
I have every intention. I mean, I live here, so I have no intention of leaving. Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, man, take it easy.
Well, be safe there, and come back on the show when everything we get a little bit more information down the road. Just like I said, there's a lot of people in the chat here saying thank you so much, Gonzalo. Please stay safe. That's the words from the crew over here, and thank you so much for joining us today.
That's very, very kind of you. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate those very kind wishes. That's very much appreciated.
Well, you've been doing amazing work. You really have.
I hope I didn't rant too badly. And so
no.
I'll catch you guys later. Okay.
Your rants, you gave us a lot of information. So rant away, sir. Be safe today. You have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Ooh, Gonzalo Lira. From the front lines, ladies and gentlemen, we can hear bombs going off in the background, literally pausing to say, hey, listen to this. This is crazy, but that's what it's all about. And I want to thank all of you guys who jumped in today. I mean, amazing support. 440 people watching on YouTube, out of the algorithm, no bells going off, no recommended videos, and you guys are there joining us. Thank you so much. Over 120 people on the Rockfin, and a lot of great tips today. I would love to read some. Let's get on there real quick, because you guys are just so friggin' amazing. Thank you so much. Snorky Y2K is in the house, by the way. Let's start with Rob Janot. Thank you so much. Love, strength, and gratitude. All you beautiful kids. You too, Slow News Day. Thank you so much, Rob Juno. You're amazing. It's always great knowing that you're there, having our backs. Hamza Mir, how you doing? What's going on? Good to see you. Riza and JP are going to be there at the 10th, and I will too. So I'm going to go speak with Riza Islam. Hopefully get him on the show. He said he'd come on the show. I haven't really even reached out to him. I've been so crazy busy. As you know, this move has been taking place. Bethlehem Tessafe, thank you so much. Old school Bethlehem Tessafe, thank you very much for the Super Right contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. Trey Wright Fee, well spoken as FUCK. Electoralism is dead. Here's $2 more. Thank you so much, Trey Wright. Tea Leaves, where you been? We've been looking for you. We've been waiting. Tea Leaves, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. Snorky Y2K, if Khanna wants to show real criticism of India, he should submit a bill to use full power of our government and end the damn spam phone calls. That's true. I have a friend, guys, if you haven't gone over there, it's called Trilogy Media. Trilogy Media wastes time of scammers trying to call, rip old ladies off, rip off American citizens. It happens on a regular basis. A lot of the places are in India and Pakistan. Check it out, Trilogy Media. These are real attacks on America's elderly. You're damn right, Snarky Y2K. Go check out Trilogy Media. I'm telling you guys, as someone who's over 60, I get over 20 calls per day claiming I have to go to jail or my computer is going to be shut down or some other scam. That's what they do. But let me ask you a question, Snarky Y2K. How do you think they get the permission to do this or the mentality to do this in their mind? To have the mentality to say, okay, I can do this, because the United States goes around with its imperialism, does what it wants to do, whatnot. The West in this situation, when it comes to India, deep-rooted stuff, and they figure, hey, if we're getting scammed, let's scam there. So really, to tell you the truth, we also have to keep our government's behavior in line as well. Off subject, Pasta. Do you have a good kale recipe? I just had to ask. Tea leaves. I like to just take kale, olive oil, garlic, cook it down like spinaca and eat it that way. I like to use it in my smoothies. It's great. But I like to get black kale. And I like to do it with onions, garlics, and shallots and have a good time. Oz, I lost my TV screen. Oh, not Oz. Rob, I lost my TV screen behind me. I think it went to sleep. Can Gonzalo say anything about cruise missiles? DW says Russia launched on Kharkov. I don't know. I wish I would have caught that. Katie, I'm so sorry. I should have caught that. I was always read the super chats after, but maybe we can send them an email and ask them and get you an information. Sound good? Cam Schwari, Kate, old school. Thank you for the Super 8 contribution. Fiorella, I know you can't hear this, but if you're getting on your plane, it's always appreciated on the couch. Carrie Mark, gain of function, hashtag Fauci. Gain of Fauci. Thank you, Carrie Mark. It's always good to have the old school people in there. We love you, Carrie Mark. Mercy me. Oh, mercy, mercy me. Desperate politicians do desperate things. Hashtag false flag. Thank you, Mercy Me. John T, thank you for the Super 8 contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. Aram, thank you for such the generosity. That is awesome. Thank you so much. No, Aram, thank you. Deborah Brackett, thank you for the Super 8 contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. And Carrie Mark, the U.S. politicians just want to leverage with Russia to keep the corruption they hide hidden. They would rather see the world end than be exposed as the monsters they actually are. I don't know about that, Carrie Mark. You know, they get all this information, but they control the media. They control the narrative. And like I say, they always convince American citizens to be pitted at each other, red team, blue team, rather than look up and say, what's going on with these politicians? That's something to think about. Jim Garrison, if you don't know who Jim Garrison is, Jim Garrison went after Clay Shaw and tried to try him for the death of John F. Kennedy. Thank you so much. $5 for some truth while we can get it. Thank you so much, Jim Garrett. Yeah, while we can get it, because who knows what they're going to do next. They're trying to take everybody's microphone away. Carrie Mark again. Remember that America is the only nation to drop nukes on another country twice. Don't forget it, Carrie Mark. Thank you for the Super 8 contribution. Angel Santos is in the house. Thank you for the Super 8 contribution. Angel Santos, it is always appreciated on the couch. And Teresa Bear, my bear, a client of mine, lost almost $50K in a scam call to South America. Check out Trilogy Media. My guys do that great work over there. They get a lot of criticisms because they feel that these people are poor and they see the behavior of our corporations and it's sometimes merited. I don't think so. They target elderly people. They target poor people. They take their last dollars. It's something that's awful. And it's something that we should be dealing with and stuff. They're doing it from Nigeria a lot as well. So that's that, guys. I have one more section today. We're going to blitzkrieg through it really, really quickly. Take a look at this, guys. Oz, if we can get up, go to slide number 12. The top 3 reasons why the U.S. Predator class wants a Ukraine-Russian war. And we're going to do it old school. Oz, I don't know if it's a big recommendation, if you can make it happen. Could we get any music playing in the background? Oz says no, so I'll just go into it. Well, number 3. Here's the number 1 reason. Slide number 13. The U.S. wants to eliminate any challenge to the monetary system whatsoever. They want to destroy cryptocurrency, and they have sent Elizabeth Warren as their bulldog. And that's what they want to do. They're using this whole situation, going, Vladimir Putin is using Bitcoin and other cryptos to get funded. He's evading our sanctions. So now they've sent Elizabeth Warren out there and they want to crush crypto. And it's not really about Russia. It's about the fact that there's a system, a monetary system that's not the US dollar. And the US dollar is golden to these people. Without the US dollar, if we're operating on another monetary system, and I say this all the time, I love Bitcoin because I can go around the IMF. I don't have to deal with the central banks anymore. And if I can do that, that's a monetary system that I like playing in. So here is Elizabeth Warren. Once again, there was a hearing the other day, and this is from Natalie Brunell. Senator Warren, with all due respect, when someone is trying to help you learn more about Bitcoin, the most important thing to do is listen first with an open mind before passing judgment and criticism. But that's not her game. She doesn't want to learn. She doesn't want to understand. All she wants to do is demonize, demonize, demonize. Use Putin as a conduit, say, oh, look at Putin. He's getting crypto. We got to eliminate crypto. And that's why they're using that. They want to eliminate this system. So that's why she cuts this gentleman off who's out there to educate her in this hearing the other day, in this crypto hearing. Take a look at Senator Warren.
Mr. Levin, let's consider one of Putin's cronies who already has $1 billion or so in crypto that he wants to hide from the governments that are enforcing sanctions on oligarchs. Now, can this oligarch make it harder to trace his money if he hops from one blockchain to another, if he deposits those tokens into a couple of wallets that don't require him to provide identifying information, and if he uses a mixing service that launders his money with other people's money?
Thank you, Senator. So the scenario that you described, where an oligarch has $1 billion to be able to launder, requires significant amounts of liquidity to be able to obfuscate that amount of money through the use of cryptocurrency. In fact, many times we've been able to identify.
I'm sorry, let me just remind you of what my question was again. What I'm asking is about the tools that are available. Now, he may have to break it up into multiple pieces of, who knows, $100 million at a crack. But the question I'm asking is, does hopping from one blockchain to another, does depositing tokens in a couple of wallets that don't require him to provide identifying information, and does using a mixing service all make it easier for him to hide his money?
So, Senator, the answer to that question is no, because the chain hopping that occurs, you need to actually provide the tokens, which in a transparent way that allows you to move across blockchains. We've actually got software that allows you to...
So you don't think chain hopping makes it any easier to hide your money? How about depositing tokens in wallets that don't require identifying information?
You can always split the money up into wallets that don't require...
And that would help hide the money. And how about using a mixing service?
That doesn't remove the record of where the money actually sits.
But the question I'm asking is, does it make it harder to track the money?
No, so it doesn't make it harder to track the money,
and
because
using a mixing service, you're telling me, doesn't make it harder to launder money?
The daily liquidity value of mixing services globally is about $30 million.
So you might have to do this day by day?
And we have done extensive work in tracking large sums of money through mixers that have led to the arrests of people and the disruption of their activity.
I'm actually a little surprised by your answer, since you charge a lot of money to untangle and track assets through the system, and the system keeps developing more ways to obscure that money, and that's part of what you advertise.
See, she's trying to simplify. First of all, if you don't get the answer you want, keep asking the question, just asking it in a different way. Keep interrupting, keep cutting people off. Don't try to really explain what's going on. Mr. Levin over here was trying to give her an answer of what's what. It's a clear, visible ledger, right? You can see it. The blockchain is open source, whatnot. And there's ways to move about. And that was what we heard in the hearing last year, when there were other entities there saying, instead of trying to sanction this stuff, instead of trying to stop crypto and Bitcoin, we need to embrace it and learn everything about it. Therefore, if we want to stop criminals from obtaining money, we have to understand everything what's going on, the way the system works. She just wants it eliminated. She's trying to simplify everything down to a bumper sticker. So therefore, she can convince a lot of people who aren't involved, especially the older generation, to get rid of crypto and to suppress it and to stop the on and off ramps. That's what this is about. And they're using Russia as an excuse to use that. That's the number 3 reason right there. The number 2 reason, the ruling class wants to continue to take away our civil liberties and never give them back. Like always, they want to crush any dissenting voices. And you can see right here, YouTube is blocking RT and other Russian state-funded media channels from generating revenue on its platform. And that's what they say, is that they're generating money, but they really just want to cut down and shut down any dissenting voices. You know, they took our Discord down last week, right? They just wiped it off the planet. They've been doing that to a lot of other people. We hear all the time. Kim Iverson just got a strike the other day. She got hit, right? So left and right, it's anybody who has a dissenting voice they want to take down. And the censorship is mass right now. And they're using Russia as the scapegoat right now, as we have to take down Russian disinformation. Before it was COVID, now it's Russian disinformation. And every single time they do this, we never get those civil liberties back. It all started with the Patriot Act, and it hasn't stopped since then. They want to make sure that anybody who speaks out against the empire, like a Julian Assange, will spend years behind bars and die behind bars, or they'll just kneecap you to the point where you can't make a living. But the Convo Couch is lucky because we have you out there and we have Rockfin. And it's just like Garrison said, Jim Garrison, here's a few bucks for freedom of speech until we have it, because these people will go to any lengths whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? Nothing will stop them from shutting down to any dissenting voices. That's why I don't believe it's just the people that we see on the TV screen who are running things. I believe they're taking orders from up above, central banks, IMF, World Economic Forum, Council of Foreign Relations. They want to shut down dissenting voices. And the problem is that Americans, a group of Americans, didn't object to it. A small group of Americans, a decent-sized group of Americans, they cheered it on when Alex Jones got the platform. Remember that? Alex Jones, he's awful. He's putting out false information and whatnot. The poor kids of Sandy Hook, all blah, blah, blah. And whether you like him or not, they should have never taken down his voice. The only people they should be taking down their voice is if they're inciting violence, like a Lindsey Graham, who just called for the execution of a war leader. But are they taking him down? No. So that's why you know it's not about misinformation. It's about the right information, their information. And if you have any information that's different than their information, then you're putting out the wrong information, and they can't have that, because that's a threat to their power. I've said it before, ladies and gentlemen. I'll say it again. The number one threat to the empire of America is its own citizens. They know that. The governments aren't at war with each other. They're at war with their own citizens. The number one reason, though, it's the military-industrial complex's turn to get fed by the ruling class. We just gave $1 billion to Ukraine last week, mostly in weapons, and Congress is rubbing it in our face. I talked about this early. Here's Jen Psaki. Listen to her. They're bragging. They're gloating about it. The fact that they gave $1 billion to Ukraine in a week, yet we have 700,000 people on the streets. Go ahead, Oz. Play this clip. This one really burns my ass.
Finally, I know you had just heard the president give remarks on this, but for clarity's sake and to make sure everybody fully understands the totality of assistance, what the president announced today was an additional $800 million in security assistance to Ukraine, bringing the total U.S. security assistance committed to Ukraine to $1 billion in just the past week, and more than $2 billion since the start of the Biden administration, and more specifically, since last March. There's additional security assistance in the omnibus the president signed into law yesterday, but we're also working with the Ukrainians and others on delivery mechanisms of that. So what he outlined today is the additional $800 billion from that. And this assistance, as you heard him say, will take the form of direct transfers of equipment from the Department of Defense to the Ukrainian military to help them defend their country against Russia's unprovoked and unjustified invasion. It also includes U.S.-produced short-range air defense systems the Ukrainians have been using to great effect, systems they are trained on. We've also identified and are helping the Ukrainians acquire additional longer-range systems on which their forces, again, are already trained, as well as additional munitions for these systems. And we will continue to work with allies and partners to transfer equipment.
To give them more weapons, to spend money, like I've said before, right, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that my good friend Pidge told me about a long time ago. Americans don't care if we win the war. Americans don't care if we lose the war. The foreign policy apparatus of Americans, I'm not talking about the American citizens, I'm talking about the ruling class of the West. They don't care win, lose, they just care we have it. Because whatever happens, if they get to sell their weapons, they make their money, so they don't care about the results. That's why they just want to make sure there's constant conflict created. And I put this tweet up the other day, and if you haven't gone and liked this tweet, please go like and share it. I want to get a tweet up to 2,000 over here. I haven't had that yet. So y'all are okay with the U.S. giving Ukraine an additional $1 billion in U.S. tax dollars while there's 700,000 homeless people sleeping on the streets in America? Curious, how long are you going to allow yourselves to get played? And I don't know how long it's going to be, but this is the real like privilege of Americans, right? We haven't had to worry about bombs hitting us, whatnot. But there's some people out there that it doesn't affect the money they get. They're going to be okay. And they can sit there and put their Ukraine flag in their bio and, Putin must be stopped. But we have some really, some serious suffering going on in the streets. We have small businesses getting closed left and right. We have school issues we have issues with our funding of our education. We have homeless people on the street. We have 22 veterans every day killing themselves, mainly from PTSD from what they had to witness and do overseas. Okay. We have so many problems at home. We really have the ability and the money, even though money's bullshit. We have the money to send $1 billion in 1 week to Ukraine. You tell me out there in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, what could America have done with that $1 billion that we're using to propagate war, mostly weapons? What could they have done? Gonzalo Lira, who's there in Ukraine, just explained to you that they destroy these weapons before they even get to use them. That's why they say they don't care who wins or loses. They just care that they have that war and they're making money hand over fist. Candace Owens, right? You don't even have to agree with Candace Owens. She said for 2 years, the media convinced you to fight an invisible war against COVID by handing the government trillions that will never be accounted for. Trillions. Now it's the war in Ukraine, which you must give them trillions more for. The money laundering will never stop until we say no. Now, I don't give two damns or two whatever about how you feel about Candace Owens. She's 100% on this tweet here. She's 100% right. It's never going to stop until we make it stop. End of story. And here's something I want to bring up too as well, because when Jen Psaki was saying those things, I listened to the press conference, right? The rest of the press conference is a bunch of warmongers in the media. They're upset that we haven't given Ukraine more sophisticated weapons, more high-end weapons. Well, you're giving them all these things. They're offensive weapons. Why don't you give them better weapons? That's the type of media we have. We have a pro-war media, just like we did the New York Times in Iraq, CNN in Iraq. They propagate these wars. They push these wars. This is from CNN the other day. It's a little clip from Alan McLeod he put up the other day. Listen to the disgustingness of what is sold. Like we said, all these people with their Ukraine flag in their bio now. Where were you on Syria? Where were you on Yemen? Where were you on Libya? Roll the clip, Oz.
Seems like fertile ground for a false flag operation. So what is NATO going to do if, it's one thing for sarin gas to be used on people in faraway Syria who are Muslim and who are of a different culture. What is Europe going to do when it's on European soil, done to Europeans? Are they going to intervene?
Wow.
Are they going to keep standing back?
I guess Syrians or Muslims aren't regular people.
And are they willing to have a direct confrontation with Vladimir Putin, which is what he seems to want?
This bitch here.
Wow. Wow. Well, these are Europeans now. These are white people getting killed. What's going to happen now? Where were you, progressives? Where were you, libertarians? I think the libertarians were there. A lot of them there. The true libertarians there. Where were a lot of the Trumpers? Patriots, where were you? When we were bombing the shit out of Syria, when we turned Libya into a slave market, where were you? Like I said before, I understand and I remember why I became a Democrat at one point, why I supported Democrats. Now I will never do it. I agree with Gonzalo. They're as corrupt as they come and stuff. It was the Iraq War. It was the Iraq War. And now a lot of you guys are back on the world freaking military industrial complex globalist bust of like just going around bombing places, just propagating these wars. We got to stop Putin because he has aspirations of creating the old school Soviet Union. That is the dumbest, stupid shit I've ever heard in my life, ladies and gentlemen. You're just projecting. We're talking about facts here. We're talking about funding. We're talking about weaponry. We're talking about putting up puppet governments. We have all the receipts from 2014 with Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt over there. You're talking fantasy land. Those are the top 3 reasons, ladies and gentlemen, of why we're getting involved with Ukraine and why we want that war. Military industrial complex. Let's get rid of cryptocurrencies. Let's end our civil liberties, because we can't have people talking back about against their government. No. We got to stop all that stuff. And that is that for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining in. You guys were amazing. We'll have more announcements later on in the week. A lot of great things are going on. By the way, Teresa Bear, thank you for that last super chat contribution. I think I already thanked you, but we had over 130 people on Rockfin at one point, over 400 people on YouTube. A bunch of shows just came on and you guys stayed with us, and that means a lot to us. Even if you don't have a few bucks to give us, we understand. If you can like us, if you can share our videos, we're going to have this cut up into 3 videos as we always do. We're going to get it out there, guys. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I love you. For Pasta Jardula, Fiorella, Isabel, Gonzalo Lira, and my man, Oz, on the 1s and 2s with the overalls and the combo couch. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you Monday. Combo out, everybody. Peace.